This is Into the Multiverse with Josh Peck.
Is there a set scale of measurement found in nature? Imagine if God had a cosmic tape measure that he used in creating the universe. What would it look like? Strangely enough, there might be answers to these questions and more found in the strange study of Planck boundaries. And that is what we will be talking about today. Hello and welcome to Into the Multiverse. I am your host, Josh Peck. If you haven't had a chance to do so, make sure you subscribe and click the little bell. Don't forget to do that. Make sure YouTube knows you want to be notified. And just in case YouTube doesn't notify you anyway, just know that you will get a new video, a new episode of Into the Multiverse every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Central. Now, Planck boundaries come up time and again in various attempts to describe some of the strange properties higher spatial dimensions might have. Planck boundaries are so important, in fact, that they have potential to define the exact amount of separation between our physical world and the fourth spatial dimension, which in my opinion can be considered as synonymous with the spiritual world of the Bible. Max Planck was a German theoretical physicist who had made incredible contributions in physics throughout his life. In fact, Planck founded quantum theory in 1900 and actually coined the term quantum. He is also known for developing the Planck constant, which is a physical constant that describes the quanta of action in quantum mechanics. The term quanta, which is the plural of quantum, defines the smallest amount of measurement possible for any given thing, such as length, energy, time, etc. For example, a photon is a single quantum of light, sometimes referred to as light quantum. Planck was able to show that energy doesn't travel in steady, indeterminate progression as we might think, but actually travels in tiny packets. In 1918, Planck received the Nobel Prize in Physics for his discovery of energy quanta. It is with the Planck constant that Planck boundaries can be determined. So the Planck constant is so important in reconciling modern physics with the Bible because it shows that there is a type of natural measurement scale in which everything within physical existence adheres. We can actually determine the units of measurements God used to create the universe. And having access to this scale is comparable to possessing God's personal tape measure, thermometer, or even stopwatch. The Planck length is also important to modern quantum physics because it is the only length that could naturally appear in a quantum theory of gravity, and gravity is connected to the shape of space. So for our purposes here, you only really need to know that the Planck length, the unit of measurement in God's scale here, is incredibly small. It's subatomic, in fact. It is so incredibly small that it is nearly impossible to fathom. The Planck length is 1,000th of a millionth of a trillionth of a centimeter. Now, this is usually represented as the measurement notation 10 to the minus 33 centimeters, which is about 24 orders of magnitude smaller than an atom and 19 orders of magnitude smaller than a proton. So to define some of the terms used above, 10 to the negative 33 is an expression of scientific notation, which is just an easier way to express extremely cumbersome numbers. When a power of 10 has a negative exponent like that, it indicates a decimal number or number of zeros with a decimal point. Therefore, 10 to the negative 33 is the number 0.0 with 33 zeros and a 1 at the end. So a number with a positive exponent indicates how many zeros come after the 1. So 1 to the 33 is the same thing as, it's just a shorter way of writing the number 1 with 33 zeros after it. Now an order of magnitude is a factor of 10, so 24 orders of magnitude is a 1 with 24 zeros, or 1 trillion trillion, or 10 to the 24, which again is the number 1 with 24 zeros after it. Now in order to put this into perspective, consider this example from Wikipedia. This is a direct quote. Quote, "The size of the Planck length can be visualized as follows. If a particle or dot about 0.1 millimeters in size, which is at or near the smallest the unaided human eye can see, if that were magnetized in size to be as large as the observable universe, then inside that universe-sized dot, the Planck length would be roughly the size of an actual 0.1 millimeter dot. In other words, the diameter of the observable universe is to within less than an order of magnitude larger than a 0.1 millimeter object, roughly at or near the limit of the unaided human eye, by about the same factor 10 to the 31, as that 0.1 millimeter object or dot is larger than the Planck length. More simply, on a logarithmic scale, a dot is halfway between the Planck length and the size of the observable universe, end quote. So in other words, you can think about it like this. If you were shrunk down to a Planck length, the diameter of the period at the end of any sentence on any page in pretty much any book would still be about 3.5 times longer than the diameter of the unshrunk, normal-sized, observable universe in relation to our normal human size. So not only did God create things so large that we don't know exactly where they end, like the universe, but he also used a scale with units of measurement so small that we have trouble even fathoming it. Now, what's really interesting about the Planck length is what happens when something even smaller is attempted to be considered. So physicist Lisa Randall explains, this is a direct quote from her, quote, "The Planck scale energy, the energy needed to explore the Planck scale length, is exactly the energy at which gravity is no longer dismissible as a feeble force. At the Planck scale length, gravity cannot be ignored. In fact, at the Planck scale energy, gravity constructs barriers that make conventional quantum mechanical calculations impossible. Anything sufficiently energetic to probe 10 to the negative 33 centimeters would be snapped up into a black hole that imprisons whatever enters," end quote. So nothing smaller than a Planck length is possible because it would require energy larger than is calculably fathomable. This brings us to Planck energy. Now, while most measurements corresponding to the Planck constant are incredibly small, such as the Planck length, mass, and time, their measurements of energy at the Planck scale is incredibly large. The Planck scale of energy is around 1.22 times 10 to the 19 giga-electron volts. So, and that's represented as GeV in those types of calculations. It's 1 billion electron volts. An electron volt, which is usually represented as eV, is a unit of energy equal to approximately 1.6 times 10 to the negative 19 joule, which in calculations is usually just represented by J. By comparison, one 100-watt light bulb turned on for 1 minute equals about 6,000 joules. So we measure watts as equal to joules per second. So 1 watt is equal to 1 joule per 1 second. So 100 watts equals 100 joules per second. And you multiply the 100 joules per second by 60, for 60 seconds in 1 minute. And that's how you arrive at 6,000 joules for 100 watts at 1 minute. Now, given that, we discovered that the Planck energy scale is incredibly large. It's 100 billion times the energy locked in a proton. With numbers such as this, it begins to make sense why an extreme amount of energy is needed to probe the Planck length and how that would result in a black hole. A similar result is theorized when dealing with mass on the Planck scale. Now, Planck mass is the maximum allowed mass for quanta. In other words, it's the most amount of energy, or the most amount of mass, possible for the smallest thing possible. Now, this type of mass isn't as impossible to imagine, although the actual size of quanta can be. Unlike all other Planck base units and most Planck-derived units, the Planck mass has a scale more or less conceivable to humans. So Planck mass is usually represented as 2.17645 times 10 to the negative 8 kilograms, represented in math as a kg. Now, it is traditionally said to be about the mass of a flea, but more accurately, it's about the mass of a flea egg. So it's somewhat conceivable. Now, it's said, much like when dealing with the Planck length, that if two quanta of Planck mass or greater ever met, they would spontaneously form a black hole. It's interesting how the consequence of a black hole comes up in regards to Planck boundaries. It's almost as if black holes are a natural type of fail-safe system that God put in place in order to keep reality within the appropriate boundaries necessary for physicality to even be possible. And that brings us to the last Planck measurement that we'll look at in today's episode, that of time. Now, we've talked about time quite a bit, so we may as well throw in Planck time in this episode. But Planck time is measured as the time required for light, for one particle of light, a photon, to travel a distance of 1 Planck length within a vacuum. Now, this is the absolute shortest amount of time that is possible. It equates to be about 5.39121 times 10 to the negative 44 seconds. And it's usually approximated as about 10 to the negative 43 seconds for ease of reference. This is an incredibly short period of time, one that is inconceivable to our human mind, and one that is far from observable. So to put this in perspective, as of May 2010, the smallest time interval ever directly measured is 12 attoseconds, or 1.2 times 10 to the negative 17 seconds, which equals to about 3.7 times 10 to the 26 Planck times. So an incredibly large number of Planck times is found within that scale, and that's the shortest we've been able to detect or to measure so far. Now, there are far deeper implications of Planck time that I described in my book, Unraveling the Multiverse, which is available now at skywatchtvstore.com. But for our purposes here, it's just important to know that this shows time as being quite different than what we may have imagined. You know, we normally would think of time like a constantly flowing river, but in reality, time is more like a film strip in a movie or a stack of photographs. Each snapshot encompasses the entire physical universe and represents 1 Planck time. Our journey through time is nothing more than quickly flipping through these snapshots. Every passing second is made up of billions of billions of billions of Planck time snapshots. And in fact, there are more units of Planck time in 1 second than there are seconds contained in the 1.4 billion or so years since the time that most physicists believe, and many Christians would disagree, that the universe actually began. So when we really think about how constraining time and physical reality actually can be, it can help us put into perspective the biblical notions of God existing outside of time and space, although he does so choose now and then to enter the boundaries of time and space, here and there. But his ability to see the beginning from the end and the ultimate beauty of his creative nature can be found in these types of discoveries, which is what this show is all about. And boy, what a lot of fun to talk about that. So I would like to know what you think about Planck length and Planck time especially. I've always found that especially interesting for me. Now, if you haven't had a chance to do so, make sure you subscribe. And if YouTube still doesn't notify you, just know that every Thursday at 9 a.m. you will get a brand new episode of Into the Multiverse. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, take care and God bless.
Warren Marcus helps unlock the meaning from the ancient Hebrew of God's priestly prayer of the blessing and unfolds the mystery of this end times revelation on how this prayer, written by God Himself, can help you in your daily walk towards supernatural health, divine provision, and the power and authority to fulfill your God-given destiny and purpose. Skywatch TV is proud to announce the ancient priestly prayer of the blessing special offer. Through Warren's revelatory book, you'll discover the supernatural power of the Hebrew language, that the Shekinah glory is the manifest presence of the Heavenly Father, that Jesus Himself, the high priest of the new covenant, prayed this divine prayer over His disciples as He ascended into heaven, and that He's ready to pronounce this divine prayer over you now. Plus, order now and receive this beautiful, authentic, numbered replica of the ancient priestly prayer pendant with chain. In 1979, a Jewish archaeologist, Gabriel Barkay, discovered 2 silver amulets in a cave opposite the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Inscribed on the silver in the ancient Paleo-Hebrew was the ancient priestly prayer of the blessing. It is the oldest intact Bible scripture in existence today and is 400 years older than the Dead Sea Scrolls. The front of this incredible, beautifully crafted pendant is inscribed with the divine prayer written in the ancient Paleo-Hebrew as originally discovered. The back includes the prayer inscribed in English just as we have in our Bibles today. Also included with each pendant, you'll receive an accompanying priestly prayer mini booklet, so you can carry the prayer with you and proclaim it over yourself wherever you go. But that's not all. Included within the pages of the mini booklet, a special free internet link where you can see and hear the divine prayer pronounced over you by Warren Marcus in the Amplified Hebrew to English translation. And you can hear words world-renowned Messianic worship leader Paul Wilbur, singing the divine prayer over you in Hebrew. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of over $55. Yours now for your donation of only $30 plus shipping and handling. The Ancient Priestly Prayer of the Blessing special offer, available now at skywatchtvstore.com. Order now or call 1-844-750-4985.